Broadcasting from Ireland, featuring interviews with some of the biggest names in magic. Welcome to the Deceive Reality Podcast with your hosts, David Peace and Steve Spade.
And we're back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Deceive Reality Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Steve. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Brilliant. And we have a new person joining the podcast as a guest this week, another David, which is always the best way to do. David Regal. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I saw your DR logo and I felt like it was a salute to me, but apparently no.
It was. It was. We were just trying to entice you into the podcast, and we based the whole show around it. There you go.
Well done. Good man. Excuse me. A little bit of this here. I'll get this in frame so you can see. This is what wakes me up in the morning. It's actually, I start with coffee, then I segue to Diet Mountain Dew. I'm fine during the day so long as there's always some liquid in me changing the way I'd otherwise feel. That's all I need.
Absolutely. Yeah. Caffeine or maybe some alcohol as the day goes on. That's all you need.
Exactly. And you can mix them and just let them fight them out.
I do remember years ago being in New York and having Four Loko and was like, that fought it out all right inside of me.
What time is it there?
It is just coming up to 8 p.m.
Oh, yeah. It's almost noon here.
Okay.
So I've only been drinking for 2 hours. But you've been.
Yeah, we've been drinking since time began.
And you can see the professionalism as well with the Diet Mountain Dew label out to the camera to get the sponsorship deals, and you got to go label out at all times.
I was only in Ireland for one day because one of these magic trips where I don't know who booked it. Did I book it? Did someone else book it? I have no memory of that. But I got to go to Ireland for one day. So how much can you see? Well, if Pat Fallon adopts you, you can see quite a bit.
Good man, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had a wonderful time. I've never met a kinder human being than Pat. And we went up to the tallest pub or the highest pub, and I'm looking out and there's the rolling hills with sheep on them like it's a Hollywood movie, and they had to create Ireland. It looked just the way it was supposed to look.
That's cool.
Yeah, we really do take it for granted because we just see all that stuff all the time. So it's like, another rolling hills and sheep.
Yeah, more sheep. Great.
Yeah,
but when was that, David?
Some years back. But I remember everyone at Ireland was super, super nice. And that lecture was beautifully, whoever took care of the venue and everything, it was just beautifully handled. And it was a wonderful trip. And I was immediately sorry I wasn't there a week because just everyone was so nice. And I don't know if that's true and you feel it's true, but I find when I travel, there's some places where people just seem nicer. And I go, is it in the water? Is it the culture? What's going on here? And Ireland was like that. It's like, wow, everyone's just got a different sort of attitude.
Yeah, most people are inebriated most of the time, so you're good. Well, not all. No, it's just Mountain Dew, though. It's nothing. Nothing too serious.
Well, the funny thing is, I was only in Ireland one day. So how is it possible that like 25 different people, independently of one another, made sure I knew that Guinness is healthy? It's actually very good for you. It's got vitamins and minerals. Why is everyone telling me this?
I think it's kind of like beaten into us in school that you have to tell everyone that Guinness is good for you, and it was everywhere. It was it was kind of like the old, the cigarettes were good for you back in the day and all that kind of stuff. It was the same kind of marketing when they could kind of market whatever way they want to. It's great, buy this car and all these women will flock to you because of this car, or drink Guinness. Of course it's healthy,
Yeah, we're all brand ambassadors for Guinness without even realizing it. You gotta just sell it. So that's absolutely, it's cool hearing people when they come to Ireland that they have a good time, because it's always one of those things that it's nice to have a reputation from a small little rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, that it actually makes an impact on the world. And we've definitely spread out and impacted places as Irish people. We really do infect it. But seeing as
definitely
from this, we're going to talk about magic and David's career and other things we just chat around. But to begin with, how did you get into magic? 'Cause I know you do a lot of like comedy and comedy writing and that sort of stuff. But where did your love of magic in particular begin?
Well, my story is in some ways very typical, with a little bit of fortune thrown in. Typical insofar as a kid, my grandma would come back from a trip and give me a magic trick. I remember having a brass cubio that I think she got in Germany and came back, and that I treasured for many, many years. And then someone got me a magic set. I think it was the F.A.O. Schwartz magic set in a blue box. Every now and then I see it on eBay. I go, that's the one I had. And so, like a lot of kids, I'd be doing that little show for my family or what have you. But pretty early on, I was doing kid shows because in downtown Boston, I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. And back then, things are very loosey-goosey. And, I'm a small man. I was even smaller kid. So imagine me at the age of like 11, you're taking the subway. We called it the trolley. You went to downtown Boston where there were many joke stores that also sold magic. So there'd be, rubber vomit and rubber chickens and dirty novelties, and then lovely magic. And I mean, they had P&L silks and, Morrissey Dove pans and, the stuff you normally see in a pretty good magic shop, back then. And when I say back then, I mean the 1960s. So I got into magic sort of accidentally, the way some kids do. And then, of course, the libraries in the Newton area, there was a multitude of magic books. I still remember some of the instructions to some of those tricks. When I was a kid, taking out literally every magic book you can take out from the library.
Do you still have them?
Come in.
Do you still have them, David?
Some I've replaced. I got rid of my magic stuff when I went to college. Then I realized, this isn't just something I enjoyed as a kid. This is something I'm still enjoying. And it did surprise me. I mean, magic has just been a lot to me. And I can't be, blasé about it, because it's really saved me in many ways and helped me in many ways, even though I just thought it was some bug I had, some obsession, a real love, the way you love, these passions you get in your life. For some people, it's sports. For me, not sports. Five and as a kid, I was kind of tubby. So this was this was not good. I was just thinking today, remembering, I could say I was last picked, on teams. In school, the two team captains would just get to pick people for their sides. I was worse than last pick, because they go through everybody, get to me, this tubby little, at that time, uncoordinated kid, and they would offer me to the opposing team. I know it's our turn, but you can have Regal. You really can. It's all right. And they say, no, you keep Regal. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how I got on that. But anyhow, around the same time, I had a friend in elementary school. He was kind of the class performer. And he didn't become a performer professionally, but all through school, he was the big performer. And his dad must have had a little bit of money. He was a doctor, I believe, and would take trips to New York, where, of course, Lou Tannen's magic shop was. And he'd come back with presents for Jerry, because Jerry was into magic. And the presents were like a P&L appearing wand. I mean, these are nice tricks. And at that time, an expensive magic trick was $25. That was a lot of money.
Okay.
And Jerry had a Forgetful Freddy. And if you remember, that trick is a piece of wood in the shape of a little kid. The head would come off, and you'd say, Forgetful Freddy could forget everything, even his head. You'd blow up a balloon, put it where his head used to be. It'd vanish. They had via your favorite method. I remember Jerry. What do I have? But he got like a devil's hang. Anyhow, then the balloon pops. Oh, and there's Forgetful's head. Freddy's. I should call him Freddy. He didn't like being called Forgetful, I'm pretty sure. Anyhow, those are the kind of tricks. I think he had a Capenetro too, which at that time was a $25 trick. So I'm seeing all these tricks. I can't believe it, because I'm a kid. I'm in elementary school. And he says, yeah, they have a catalog. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a magic catalog. What do you mean? Oh, yeah, they have so many things. And the Tannen's catalog back then, every year or two they'd come out with a new one, and it looked like a Bible. It was hardbound. It was like this thick. And Jerry gave me probably one of his old Lieutenant magic catalogs, and that became like, nighttime magic pornography for me. I'm there with a flashlight under the covers, turning the pages, and that's a thrill. That's really a thrill. And there's a standard story I go to because it had enormous impact, but it's the truth. This is no hyperbole. I read every page of that book, and that, reading that magic catalog, one of the greatest experiences still up till now, the greatest magic experiences I've ever had, and even maybe one of the best life experiences. There's something about the way those ads would stimulate your sense of wonder and imagination, and it was thrilling. And of course, there was that weird dichotomy between the ad and the price and the item you finally received. I remember one item was always the cigarette catcher.
Yeah.
Man, the description was beyond. By the way, I bought one back then. So imagine me, a tiny little chubby kid, catching cigarettes in the air. Because of course, that's what it does. Cigarette catcher, the ad was something like, imagine showing your audience an empty hand, reaching into the ether and producing from nothingness a cigarette, which you then toss into your hat, your top hat, not included. Produced another cigarette and another. And then it said, produce as many cigarettes as you'd like. And I'm thinking, what kind of crazy machine is this that's spitting out infinite cigarettes? How can it be infinite? And you're throwing them all in your hat and says, but you're not done. You're not done. You make a magical pass and all the cigarettes in the hat vanish. I'm thinking, oh my God, price 25 cents. What? What? So that was just crazy. You read this description of something that seems dearly impossible. And yes, I was catching cigarettes in my first kid shows. Can you imagine?
You get a cigarette, and you get a cigarette, and you get a cigarette, and you get a cigarette.
Wow.
So anyhow, reading that catalog, fantastic. Also, and this does not take long, this segue, to get to the place where you have a little pad of paper next to your catalog, and you're writing down, oh, if I save up enough money, I'll get that. And you have this list of all the things you would buy, and like with different numbers of stars next to them, how many one-star things could I afford? So you know how much you can buy with however much money you're going to save by your birthday. And then there's the day you send away. Oh my God, which is preceded by the day you figure out what you're going to order, which is fantastic. The day you send it away, which is great. Then the waiting, the 6 weeks of waiting, which is painful, but great. Then the day the box arrives. What a great day that is. Then you open up the box, and it's the worst moment in the history of magic.
Every time.
Where's the miracles? It's just like a rubber band and a paper clip. And
it's all magnets. It's all fucking magnets.
Yeah, back then too, yeah. And a lot of monofilament and celluloid inserts back then. But that's, still to me, the great beauty of magic is the dichotomy between the method and the potential effect produced by that method. And it's a very hard thing to, divorce yourself from. And I think we all know magicians who still don't, especially a lot of mentalists. They spend thousands of dollars on very ornate methods, and some don't. But I'm just saying there's a lot of magicians, not just mentalists, who loved feeling the armor around their body, the armor of some crazy method.
Yeah.
An electronic thing maybe that's going to tweak your left nipple when the person does whatever it is.
I think you got that from a different catalog. That might be
there's a slight crossover here.
Yeah. Tenyo, the best Tenyo stuff has those crazy methods where you just go, oh my God. And a lot of Angelo Carbone stuff. Oh my God, that's just fabulous. And so, yeah, I love funny methods and cool methods like Gate and Bloom's magic. It's one of the best magic lectures you'll ever see because he fools you with everything. And then you laugh at the methods because they're just so crazy and great and ingenious. Yeah. But having said all that, because I'm not making fun of people who like methods, I love methods, but there's a huge dichotomy, truly, between method and effect. And it's not like one equals the other or one is the other. They're separate things. And that's, to me anyhow, really interesting. Mm-hmm. You know, and I love getting fooled horribly by a paperclip, you know. I love that. I love it.
Some of those really elaborate methods as well, they're almost so good. It's kind of like Penn and Teller. You nearly want to tell the audience, this is how I did it, because like, you know, there's some gizmos and gadgets that Dave uses, especially with the mentalism, and you're like, just tell them that it cost you 1,500 quid. Just tell the audience, you know, just
you know. It's almost then you buy them all, and then you don't use them, and you just go, I'll just use a bill of peak. It's fine. I don't need my impression stuff.
Well, anymore. Unfortunately, I had the nightmare experience of. I normally don't spend a lot of money on props. I used to deny myself what I really enjoyed, and I realized I enjoy just sort of making stuff on the kitchen table. And so most of the stuff I perform, not everything, but a lot of stuff I perform, it's just stuff I put together on the kitchen table. I just like it. I don't know why. I don't think it's a runaway ego. I think it's a feeling of, I don't know, paternity. I like holding the thing. I just like it. Like instead of a chop cup, I've made so many different chop cups. I do so many different things. And I enjoy making it. I enjoy performing with it. And don't really know why. They're not fancy. I just enjoy it. So why was I telling you this? Oh yeah, I had the nightmare experience. Oh man, I don't often spend money on magic, but I was at a magic convention. I used to go to many more conventions than I do now. And I was at a dealer's table, and across from me was a big dealer. And he wanted some of my stuff. And I said, well, do you want to do a trade? And he said, sure, retail for retail. And he wanted $1,000 worth of my stuff, retail. So I said, well, if there's ever going to be a time I buy something expensive, it is today. I'm not really buying it. I went over to his table. He had one of those electronic systems where, you know, you use it to gimmick the underside of any table. And it creates these different spots on the table where, you know, once you augment the items you're using, whatever they are, when someone lifts it, it will literally vibrate your left nipple or your right nipple or your left testicle or your right testicle. You're just all hooked up. I said, great. Now I have this thing I never would have bought because it was like $1,000 item. And I go to the Magic Castle. It's huge routine with different DVDs of different genres, and they're picking one. And, you know, it's like horror, rom-com, and adventure, and adult. And so, you know, with jokes and lines, and this big routine. And I'm doing it. And Monday, it's great. Tuesday, it's great. Wednesday, it's great. Thursday, say, just pick up anyone. They said, I did. Really? Nothing vibrated. And I did eventually sort of get my way out of it. But holy crap, that was not a good feeling. And after that, I just stopped doing anything with a battery.
Yeah. It is a terrifying moment of, oh yeah, you have done it. Okay, yeah, cool. Methods. I go through the Rolodex in your head of methods, being like, one ahead could work right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I must have there's an invisible deck on me somewhere.
I think the way I got out of it is I said, I can't remember the exact line, but it was a kind of a leading sentence. And by the titter I got, I knew they picked the adult film. I just said something, and I got the titter. I said, okay, it was adult. Yeah.
How is performing in the Magic Castle? Because I think it's one of those places that it's like on everyone's bucket list to like visit at some point. That'd be somewhere I want to go at some point. But what is the atmosphere like, and what is it like actually performing at the Magic Castle as a venue?
Well, first of all, I've been there since like 92, but that's not as long as a lot of people. There's still people there, like Howard Hamburg, who was there when the professor was there. So, and they, of course, look at me like a baby because, you know, they were there for so many more years. And anyone who was there back then loves to talk about how much better it was back then. And you know what? I'm sure it was special. But the reason I say that is, in the time since I've been there, they've been very, you know, amazing weeks. It's just a breadth of not just talent, but different sorts of entertainers. And that embarrassment of riches, which, can't be every week, but some weeks really are that. And you walk into this one place, I'm talking now as a fan and a member, you walk into this place and you just can't believe what you're able to do if you want to muscle through it and stay there from 5 p.m. till 2 a.m. And which I have done. I don't do it as much now, but I have done. It's thrilling, absolutely thrilling, and generally people are very nice. I mean, it's a breadth of personalities, just like everything is, every profession. But I found with magic and other things in life, if you're respectful and you approach people, they're very happy to talk to you. And I was fortunate again. The first time I walked into the Magic Castle, Bruce Servon, it was in the afternoon. I was there to audition, I think. Bruce Servon just walked by me. I don't know why he was there. And I knew who Bruce was because I had just bought for $10 his pamphlet, I think called The Real Work. And booklet, I should say, not pamphlet. And which had really good tricks in it, very early, self-published kind of a thing. And I said his name reflexively, Bruce Servon. He turned, and I was so excited to meet him. And I think he could obviously see it on me because I'm a reactor. I'm very bad at hiding anything. And which is, by the way, helped me in life and hurt me horribly in life. But it's who I am. But it's really great to make his acquaintance. And we stayed friends until his death. And he was super, super good as a magician. Unlike most people where they're, either as good as you'd hope they were, or unfortunately not as good. He was better. And he didn't care if magicians knew that. He really didn't. But he was better than his reputation. And he had a fantastic reputation. And his his performing persona was, I don't give a shit. That was his persona, which sometimes worked spectacularly well. And other times people went, who is this guy? But I think he honestly didn't give a shit as far as impressing people. But he had the goods and, real strong thinker as well. But as a performer, you're spoiled at the Magic Castle because everyone there is predisposed to want to see some magic. It doesn't mean they're all magic junkies like most of us are. Generally, it's a lay crowd. And generally, most of the people in the room haven't been to the Magic Castle before. I mean, it's unusual when more than half have been to the Magic Castle before. Different on members' nights and stuff like that. But generally, a lot of guests will keep the Magic Castle solvent. Those years it needed to be solvent. Because you'd be entertaining people. And some of them, and I don't know if you've noticed this when you perform for people, didn't even know how to watch magic. What are we supposed to do? They really are lay people. And so you perform for lay people. And I believe part of performing is letting them know at the beginning, what it's all about. And so they don't feel like you're going to be making fun of them, or they don't feel they're going to be put on the spot. Or maybe they think they're supposed to guess how the tricks work. No, it's not that either. You know what I mean? And you sort of have to indoctrinate them. And fortunately, we're living through a great time for magic in the U.S. And the U.S. magic in my lifetime was very, very low on the performing arts, hierarchy. And in my lifetime in America, it's risen. And with Derek Delgadia doing a great show, preceded, by Ricky Jay doing a great show. People are understanding that magic is, one of the performing arts for people that didn't really realize that. And I love Penn and Teller's show, Fool Us, for a different sort of reason. I feel Fool Us, between the lines, tells people, the people watching the show, magic is something that, the magician interprets. The magician is creating, interpreting, somehow putting their own spin or brand or personal taste into, this craft in exactly the same way a singer interprets a song. So I feel Fool Us does that. And I really am happy about that, because I feel when people see magicians now, maybe they're more apt to realize, oh, here's someone, that's brought something, to this performing art, and we're going to see what this person has brought to it. I got to tell you, I've done a lot of magic TV shows, and the producers honestly think everything is just something you buy in a magic store. Even intelligent people, they'll think, oh, come in tomorrow with a way to make a dog a cat, or whatever. They have no idea. They're not stupid, but when it comes to magic, they're stupid. And they think it's just nothing. And so I like seeing that change. And I like seeing people starting to realize, oh, this is, it's a craft, it's a performing art. There's a lot of different skill sets that go into this. And I've even had, producers pitch things essentially, oh, what if, the sky becomes green and the grass becomes blue? It's like,
yeah, I think TV producers and stuff like that, I mean, I've worked in that kind of industry as well, and I think sometimes you kind of have to pull them back and go, I'm not really magic. Yeah, I don't do like there's a skill level to here to an extent. There's no miracles. Yeah. It's fun.
I'm mildly obnoxious. I go, sadly, magic is not real.
Yeah. And you see their face drop.
The skill set difference as well. People understand that you can't get like Rihanna to sing opera, or you can't get like an opera singer to rap. But in magic, they're like, oh, you do a card trick. Here, come on the TV show and saw a woman in half. And you're like,
and it's interesting because every arena is its own arena in magic. I mean, magic is it's a category. It's a category. And what's going to seem like magic, as we know, on close up is different from stage, just as what's going to feel like magic live might be different than what feels like magic when you're watching on TV. And you really have to write to the arena, just as you normally do. If this is a close-up show or it's a stand-up show, you're not doing probably the same effects. You're going to have an understanding of the arena. And the arena of TV is vastly different. And because sometimes scripts that have magic in them, I happen to see. And you read this stuff, it's like, you feel like the script writer met a magician at a party, got this magician's number, comes like, hey, could you do this? Could you do this? The guy said, yeah. It's like, and you're just looking, you go, okay, this is over. It's over before it began.
Yeah. Very true.
What is that like? We're working like the TV where you're getting the scripts and stuff like that. And do you find that when magic comes into it, there seems to be like two categories where the magician is either the creepy, cheesy guy or the like too cool guy? There's like nobody in the middle.
Like in egomaniac, it's sort of like, I don't want to mention names because I'm not into that, but yeah, the egomaniacal, dark, full of himself magician is a very funny, comedy now. And part of that's because it's just sort of making fun of the street magic thing that happened 20 or more years ago now. It's an easy thing to make fun of because once things become a universal, they're going to be parodied. And, street magic became kind of a universal. Pardon me. I blame Guy Mountain Dew.
Thanks, Mountain Dew.
So it's parody, but it's fascinating. I was around when Penn and Teller came on the scene, bad boys of magic, and they're exposing all these tricks. But first of all, I don't apologize for them. They were exposing tricks. And you don't have to like that. They exposed cups and balls while doing it. But I forget who it was who said, and I really want to know who said this because I remember reading it somewhere, and I don't know who said it. But it was along the lines of manipulation is the only form of magic that does not suffer from exposure. And I would say their performance of the cups and balls only will make an audience more impressed with what a magician does, rather than less impressed. The awful Fox shows, at least in the US, they were Fox shows of Magic Revealed, where they'd reveal how zigzag is done. That broke my heart because that's like popping a soap bubble. Yeah, that doesn't impress anybody. That just is a horrible moment. It's like telling a child there's no Santa Claus kind of a thing. So I think people didn't get Penn and Teller what was going on with it, because they did, even back then, they were doing magic in their shows, impactful, great effects. But at the same time, it was a big hook for them, being the bad boys of magic. David Blaine, no one will confuse the two, but he made a huge statement that magicians, it seemed at the time, had a hard time digesting, because I think there's a lot of anger, because in his first special, he was doing tricks that were in the repertoire. And by that, I mean, the disgruntled magician said, "Oh, I have that in my drawer, and he's doing it, and making all this money." And also he was underplaying magic, which was revolutionary. And by underplaying magic, I think, the knee-jerk reaction that I'd see going on is, "Oh, he's not even performing." It's like, well, no, he's interpreting magic differently. And I know, because I worked with lay people that knew I loved magic, they'd come up to me to talk to me about David Blaine. And these, intelligent people honestly were wigged out by David Blaine. Some level, they thought he was really doing it. And that line was they didn't know where the line was. And, David made that happen. And again, not to overuse the word, revolutionary. That on TV at that time, I mean, magic wasn't that. You didn't think someone was really doing it. You're watching the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah.
You're watching an entertainer, and he's going to show you tricks. And so there's been enormous strides in magic, in the last 50 years. And for me, it's thrilling, absolutely thrilling to, see Ricky Jay do his show, see Derek Delgadio do his show, and others, as well. But, I don't know if everyone's as aware as they should be that this is an amazing time, in magic.
Well, we've seen it with the podcast, and we started, this is like the 52nd episode now. We started during the pandemic, and it's nice to hear when you're talking to performers that have been in the trenches, I guess, and have done all sorts of different shows and worked all the way up along. That's kind of the caliber of the people that we've had right across the building, right from performing like at the Magic Castle to performing in Vegas and cruise ships and all this kind of stuff, and kind of being perfecting their craft as they went along. Everyone kind of has a similar kind of answer to some of the questions, which I find amazing. That everyone has a different walk of life. They grew up in a different place, maybe a different country, but everyone has the same kind of, I don't know, have we just picked the right people or whatever, but they all seem to have the same kind of narrative to what is magic, and that it's an exciting time to be in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking, because magic was about as uncool as anything can possibly be in the U.S. Again, I only know the U.S. It was really uncool, and Penn and Teller were a huge influence in making it cool again. I mean, wasn't that their byline for a while? A couple of guys that know some cool stuff or something like that.
Yeah.
And they didn't like to use the word magic for a good portion of the time. And we have performers like Darren Brown, a U.S. magician, a U.K. magician, but I've traveled to Liverpool to watch him live. I mean, I'm just a huge fan of Darren's, and he is such a marvelous performer with this, 100% level of commitment. And that 100% commitment, it's just delightful. I love it. I can't get enough of it. It's just fantastic. It's really electric and fun and interesting. And he's just a great performer.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like a comedian that's effortless. Like a comedian that just seems to be funny. That they've rehearsed and they know their scripts and they know all their timings and it's all perfect. But it just seems like it's off the cuff, even though it's extremely rehearsed. I've toured with some comedians, and you think it's like, a kind of an ad lib that they might throw in, but it's the same ad lib at the same spot every night, and it's perfect. And I think that's, I think Darren has that, David Blaine has that. Any of the kind of the big names will say they have that kind of naturalist, that it just seems like it's not magic. It's blurring that line is like you said about David Blaine. People thought he was real or couldn't comprehend what he was doing. Yeah.
It's interesting. I think there's jealousy involved too. When, someone in magic breaks through, I think, it's hard. I can't imagine Well, look, I mean, I can't imagine. Why am I saying I can't imagine? I live in Los Angeles. I live in Burbank, LA area. And everyone, I made my living writing for TV. And everybody, I mean, everybody knows somebody who's not as good as they are, who's filthy rich. And so, I can't say, I don't understand. Of course I understand, because sometimes, you're jealous of people who break through, but very often people are breaking through for a very good reason.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah.
Absolutely. Because we're actually going to see Darren on Friday, so looking forward to that. He's coming to Dublin, which is going to be great. Because, yeah, he's definitely one of those performers that's just that level. It's kind of like acting. The famous quote of it, the magician is an actor playing the part of a magician. And I think it's that acting is where the natural things come from. Because there's a lot of bad actors out there who, when they're saying their lines, don't seem human. And then there are magicians who, when they go into performance mode, no longer seem human as well. And it's that just bad acting that really like comes out, because they're trying to be what they think a magician is, rather than realizing they are a magician, so just be themselves. Yeah, I think
it's funny, David. I sometimes tell people, because we've always heard, what should my character be? It should be an extension of yourself, and that's the pat answer. To which I add, unless you're an asshole. If you're an asshole, do not be yourself. Be someone else. Pick someone better than yourself and be them.
It's a good tip, to be fair. Yeah, stop being an asshole. If you're listening, stop being an asshole. David Regal said so.
Just don't be yourself. You can be an asshole, but when you're performing, maybe don't be you.
Yeah, but if you're going to be an asshole, own it. You know what I mean? Don't half-ass being an asshole. Go all in.
With working as well, like doing right.
Steve said that part.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah, you can quote me on that. Yeah.
We're working for writing and stuff, and like writing for TV. When you're performing magic, do you tend to stick very heavily to like a pre-written script for your routines, or do you like to improv as you go and have a bit looser with your words?
I think many roads lead to heaven, and I do like to remember, once I feel I've worked a routine to a place where it can be performed, I like to remember it. And that's one reason I write things down. I also have my son or somebody, record it, so I can remember timing. And sometimes if I've added humor or a new beat, I have a video record of it. But I mean, writing is helpful. And for me, different people have different approaches. And the thing that I like to do, I have no illusions. The thing I like to do isn't really a thing in magic. I like writing material. I just like it. I love performing, but I really love the process. Same thing with, comedy writing and sitcoms. I like tape day, but I love the process. I love hearing the laugh. If I wrote it and I got a laugh, I feel like, okay, the equation's complete. I'm happy. But I love the process. And because I came up through improv comedy, I had the bad habit of getting bored easily. I get bored. And if you're on a sitcom, it's a good lifestyle for people that get bored easily. Because unless you're the boss, unless you're running it, you're basically just concentrating on that episode for a week. And on Monday, there's a table read, the room rewrites it, and it's shot on Friday or Thursday and Friday, and you're done with it if you're just on staff. And then it's on to the next bucket of problems for the next week's script that has story issues and 3 pages that are death and whatever the issues are with that particular script. So because I'm just bored easily, that kind of comedy writing suited me.
Do you think you're kind of like a problem solver kind of person anyway? It came maybe from when you were really reefing through the catalog and stuff when you were a kid. Did you try to go and make some of those tricks instead of buying them and all that? Is that the way you work? And I want to solve this problem.
Well, I'm glad my dad got his shirts laundered, because back then, when you had your shirts laundered, they came with a piece of cardboard to keep the shirts stiff. Okay. I would go through his drawer and take out every piece of shirt cardboard, and I would make things and succeed and fail. And the library books and the books that I'd borrow had a lot of things she could make. And yeah, deep pleasure in, tinkering around with that stuff and seeing what could be done. And what I learned early on, which is very helpful, is to embrace failure, because you learn so much through the failures. I mean, sometimes you get lucky and, oh, look, I did it and everything was right. But when you fail, it's phenomenally helpful, because it's like it's an education in this, this method, whatever the method happens to be. Why did it fail? Oh, and what would keep that from happening? Oh, and it's like having a teacher in front of you, that piece of failure. And when we did the Carbonaro effect, I did that show for 5 years. My motto is, give me failure now. I want to fail early in the process, not late in the process. Let's fail, and let's rush to failure, because then we can create, a little bit of latitude where we're working from a position of strength down on the timeline, because the timeline in TV production is finite. You are going to shoot on Wednesday. You're shooting this on Wednesday. And if you have, let's say it was horrible, you had 2 days to make something work. Could we please fail horribly, the first few hours? Maybe fail the whole first day. So the second day we can just, turn, that experience into, a successful outcome. If you're not failing, it's very difficult to move forward. Oh, but this is based on your question of, do you write things down? I think when you work enough, you get a sense of when something is ready to be performed. So sometimes I don't know exactly what the script is going to be, but I will generally have a premise or a conceit. I think most magic benefits from that. Of course, you can argue that, if you do a matrix, do you need a premise? No, you don't. I mean, it's self-evident, coins are moving around. So I'm not saying everything. And I'm not saying it has to be a story, just a conceit. So the audience knows what the hell's going on, because them trying to go like this and what part, not even knowing what part they're supposed to be paying attention to or remember, that's not a good place for an audience. I really want them to sort of be on rails of your design. So it's interesting from the beginning. They're taken from that, original interesting point on a little trip. And the interesting thing could be anything. Before my uncle passed away, he left me a box with one thing in it. And it took me many years before I realized what to do with it. Let me show you. Okay, I sort of made that up. But
yeah.
Now they know why they're watching. Oh, his uncle left him something. It's very
There's a hook. Yeah, you're drawing. You're making it human, I guess. Like we were talking before, about making it personal, making it human. Because I think
something of interest. Something of interest. Magic is not intrinsically interesting necessarily. There's going to be audience members who just are junkies, and anything. Yeah, show me a trick. Okay, but that's not everyone. That's not even most of them. Most of them will benefit from that premise. Like those people that win in Las Vegas when they're at the card table, basically they all know one thing. I'm going to show you that one thing. Okay, now I know what's going on. That premise, and that's not much of anything, and they're easy. So it's surprising we don't tend to it more. They're extraordinarily useful and engaging an audience. Magic by itself, first of all, doesn't have that for every audience member. And going back to TV production, magic isn't always good. Magic doesn't want to be good. I would say magic wants to be bad, and we make it good or we make it great. But it's not like it wants to be that. It really wants to be, I don't know, a toy, a curiosity. It's nothing that good. We come up with ways to make this method, this series of events, just thrilling and miraculous and fun or shocking or horrifying, whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. That's something we do.
Bring to it, yeah.
Something the trick does.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think Derek Delgadio's In Love Itself really shows that, as you're saying. It's such a great show that it's kind of so personal, and magic was a metaphor in a lot of it and stuff like that. So I definitely think those sort of things.
In Derek's show?
Yeah. It really amplified that of like everything had a meaning. Like vanishing a brick wasn't just because I can. It all like had a story behind it.
Yeah.
It was like it made me rethink my entire show after the first
Well,
time.
and I feel also that because Magic in the U.S. has an inferiority complex, or has had one, there's a lot of trying to break through that with things that have a greater import, and which of course I'm for 100%. But I also add to that, it's like literature. It encompasses a lot, or movies. Some are enormously dramatic, but some can be enormously comedic. Some can be heartrending. So it should be the spectrum of human emotion. And I think hopefully, in the future in the US, Magic really will be seen as, really a category in which all these different types of, performances can live and exist. And the audience will expect interpretation.
That's true.
That really would be great. It would be great to like go onto a website where you're booking entertainment and you have like bands, rock, pop, and then it's like sideshow and magicians are all just shoved in together. It'd be nice to have like we're in like the sub menu on a website in like alternative magician is there somewhere. It'd be nice to be in the top now, but then mentalist, illusionist, comedy, family, dark, personal, like really go into it at the whole spectrum. I think that would be like a good aim over the next few years to make the awareness of the depths and variety that there is in Magic. And I do think like the Penn and Teller helped that. And you can really see it, I find, with the Got Talent shows. Because about 10 years ago, when a Got Talent show happened, and a person came out and said they were a magician, we all went, oh, God, no. And like the judges were like on their X's immediately because they were a magician. And now, like, in Britain's Got Talent the last time, half the finalists were magicians. So it's like, they're looking for magic now and they respect it more and that sort of stuff. And I think that really shows that it is heading that direction.
Yeah, it's surprising how efficiently that wave came in. But I'm glad it came in.
Definitely. Because when you're talking about it as well, like, or a while ago, you were saying like putting stuff together, like building stuff yourself. You've released lots of tricks throughout the years and DVDs and all that stuff. One of the ones that I had used quite a bit, and I think it's one of the things that everybody has at least played around with, is the sudden deck. And I think it's just one of those, such a cool idea with an inbuilt story. Where did the idea for that come from when you were first messing with it?
It came from effect first. And this sort of relates to your question about writing. Not everything has a script, when I do it the first time, but some things have only a script. In other words, my idea for the cups and balls, if you know my cups and balls, has a wrinkle in it. And I came up with the idea for the trick after like a year of studying every cups and balls routine I could find, every single one, pardon me. And I wrote the routine and I had no method. I have a trick, the very last card, which is a last card effect. You eliminate the entire deck in a very fair way and it matches a prediction. It's a very strange kind of theatrical trick. I did it on Penn and Teller's Fool Us, but I wrote the whole thing down without a method, zero method. And I think people watching go, oh, you had this prop and that prop. No. I just had the script and I looked to see what was around me. And then I came up with a method based on what was around me in that script. So sometimes it's exactly, from the other end of the telescope. And when I say I had the whole thing written, I mean it. I mean all the beats and everything I said, and no method. The method was the absolute last thing. And then you said sudden deck. It came from the same place. I just really wanted to do that effect. And people watching don't know the effect. You show at that time it was just an open flat card box. You'd show it on both sides, then fold it up and produce a deck. And then I came up with a version where it starts white. I say it's before they're printed, and then it just prints. It's still empty on both sides, and then out comes the deck. And of course, a lot of performers do it with, they don't just produce the deck, they produce the nudist deck or the mental photography deck or the invisible deck. And so it just gets, even more, turned into a routine. And I was very happy to see it done. It was really embraced. John Armstrong did it on the stage of the Magic Castle, on the stage. And I never thought I'd see it done on the stage. And it was done on one of the Got Talent shows, not in America. Another land, of course, they tried to sell it and they knocked it off and all that. But so I was very happy to have something like that embraced. And I'll tell you why. And I don't mean to get maudlin, but the TV writing I've done, even generally it's not for a popular show. If I look at my career of TV writing, it's a very workmanlike career, going from one show to the next. Generally not that popular shows. Sometimes, a few times they're popular. And I think, well, in 20 years, even with the popular ones, is anyone going to be watching that? And I'm thinking, probably not. Very, very few. But in the world of magic, which I've always loved, it's kind of a lottery I've entered myself in. There is a chance, after I'm dead, someone's going to go, sudden deck, I'm going to do sudden deck, or find a trick from a book. This is actually pretty good. I'm going to try it. And so that's a fun lottery to be a part of, because, in the creative arts, a lot of us have the genius, like the I was here gene. I want to be here. And yeah, it comes from a place of ego, I guess. I don't know. I think because I'm introverted in some ways, I want to, flatter myself to think I'm in this world where you just don't know. You've taken some of that roll of the dice, and just as I pick up something from the 1950s and go, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm gonna play around with it. Maybe in the year 3000, someone goes, oh, that thing Regal came up with in 2022. I'm gonna play with this. That would gratify
cool.
Because some of the happiest times in my life was being a young guy, preteen, and discovering magic. And if that happened with someone else, that was a young kid, and I helped make that happen, that'd be very gratifying.
Yeah, it's nice. It's kind of like a legacy type thing. I mean, one of your effects I love is a clarity box. I think that's just brilliant. It's just so clever, and the method fooled me straight away. And even doing it, even now with virtual shows through the pandemic, was such a go-to trick. It was just so strong.
Well, I'm glad you did it. And that trick I came up with on a plane, and I thought, might be nice to have a clear box. And it's not the first time a visible item has been switched, because there's bulldog clips and stuff like that. But I thought, well, clear box, I wonder. And I actually drew the method on the barf bag.
I love it.
I have it somewhere. Every now and then I come across it. Oh, there it is. But yeah, I drew the method on the vomit bag, and I took it with me. And then
very cool.
Yes.
It's such a clever effect.
Yeah, very good. Definitely, people should check that out.
Yeah, your new thing at Decision Point is a new thing that I've seen. For people who don't know about it, can you describe the effect of like what it is?
Well, when I used to go to magic shops as a kid, I think I did not learn this trick in a magic shop. When I was in the 7th grade, there was a magic club in my junior high school, and Herb Downs was our instructor. He was the print shop teacher at this big junior high school. There's a print shop. And he seemed always kind of like a meek and mild man. But I think later he became like president of the SAM in that area, and he had a goatee that he never had when I knew him. He was always this guy in an apron in the print shop. Anyhow, he used to do shows back then. He was, a part-time pro. And he'd tell us, oh, I have boxes of magic I've never opened. What do you mean? Oh, yeah, my basement. I just had to get these boxes at, auctions. What? And one of the tricks that got me, back then it was called mental choice. 3 cards with 3 colored spots: a red spot, a yellow spot, and a blue spot, I believe. And basically, he said, okay, this is the thing, I'm going to psych you out. And you'd pick a spot, and he was able to show you that he predicted that you would pick that spot. And it fooled the hell out of me. And the impact was very, very high. And it's an amazing trick. Someone told me recently that it's really Vernon has a lot to do with it. And one of Vernon's first tricks that fooled him was his father doing multiple outs. And I didn't know that. I thought this guy, because I did some research, a guy named Belcher came up with a trick. They published it very similar to Mental Choice, prior to Mental Choice. But anyhow, it was sold for like $3 when I was a kid. And many versions came out on the market. And then as an adult, additional versions, a little nicer, better versions. But all these years, I was thinking, you know what? I think I'd really like to have a couple of things. Props that seem adult, not cartoonish, not like a game, because this can be a deep mystery, a very deep mystery, and more than just a few options. So I came up with 7 symbols, and a lot of thought went into the symbols because none had a precise definition or meaning, like an eye. What does that mean? Well, maybe it means, you're perceptive. Maybe it means you feel other people are watching you. A magnifying glass. Do you closely at things? Is someone looking closely at you? Oh, a lightning bolt. You have a brainstorm, or did you step on the third rail? These are the examples that I give. And I opened with this trick at the Magic Castle. And I realized, oh my God, Mental Choice is a great trick. And yes, I came up with better props. I mean, beautiful leather wallet holds all these items, and it just in the Magic Castle, even the classiest place on earth, it did not look out of place. And I was very happy because it landed big as an opener. And John Lovick came up to me and just said, "That's a perfect trick." I said, "Can I use that as a quote?" And since then, I'm very gratified that. Who did I send one to? I'll have to check my phone. And I sent one to some other magicians, and they write back, very flattering things, saying, it lands like a ton of bricks, and which is of course exactly what you want, especially if you're doing trade shows, and stuff like that. You can't have 1 week effect. So to get reports back makes me happy because then it's just a little bit of a improvement on something that was already great. But magic's about that. It's about making these little gradations of improvement. And do you get rich selling magic tricks? No, I don't think anyone gets rich selling magic tricks if you're someone creating magic tricks, because what'll I have, a dozen tricks or something? I think if you're one of the jobbers or stores where you have 3,000 tricks and every week there's a new trick, you can make real money. But for people like me, you're basically doing it to do it. You do it because, and they don't all make money. So it's like, by and large, it's a profit. So my wife, I have my sort of my magic account, and if I was losing the family's money, I'd have to stop. But it's like, okay, here's my magic account. Let's try this. Let's try that. And my wife's very patient because the research and development, as you can imagine, sometimes it's thousands of dollars for no result. And, everything's worked out very well for me, so don't worry about that. But I came out with, I worked with another magician on a product, and the prototype took over a year, and it was perfect. And I paid for the run. I received the run, and someone had a bright idea and changed something. Happens in magic a lot. And so they're all no good. Okay. And this is overseas, and they're not going to give me the money back, and I'm not going to release it. So basically, I'm going to destroy a garage full of this thing. And,
Jesus.
Thousands of dollars. It'll be a loss, but I do not want them out there. So yeah, but even those frustrations in some weird way are fun, of missing. And I'm still trying to have it made by a different, manufacturer.
You should strap them to something on the 4th of July and just let them explode. A beautiful thing and make like a therapeutic.
Well, I'm going to make a video of me destroying them and put it on YouTube with the company's name. Company's mom.
Just dousing them in petrol.
That's always the worry when you're like putting something together and it's not you making it yourself or something. It's like letting other people control things are always risky. It's like the control freak in me goes mad at that point. I'm like, I need to have everything mine. I need to know what is happening. But it's the thing with decision points, as you saying, with the multiple outs, those old routines. I just think it's one of the most underappreciated methods because people go, oh, it's just multiple outs, but like nothing fools someone more than a good multiple out because they just have it. It's perfect. Like there is no way back from it, especially if there's a lot. I think it's really good. Like a two-way, it's like good, but once you get to like the 4 and 5s and up from there, just people don't think you can do that.
Yeah, well, there's 7 outs, and you don't have to use them all, but there's 7 outs, and there's not a bad out. I think everyone will have favorites, but there's no bad out. I mean, I'm looking at you, and I'm telling you, there is no bad out, and so it's really fun to perform. Like I'm not hawking them, but like multiple out tricks. I mean, it's the one I wanted to do it before I had the energy, or I lost the energy to do it, because as you might imagine, every element came from somewhere else. There's all these elements in the box, and I went to Penguin. I said, "Look, I can't package these. I mean, there's some things I still will, get on my ass on my office and package, but this is just too much." So basically, I worked out a deal where they did a beautiful job packaging this thing. But I sent them, cartons and cartons of these items from different parts of the world, different, suppliers. I said, put this all in a box, and it looks great.
Really cool. Yeah, no, multiple outs is one of those things. When you catch out another magician, it's usually a multiple out, or so one of those more kind of like forgotten techniques of sorts at times. I mean, even if, for example, I did a multiple out this morning in the virtual show, and I floored them because to them, obviously, we know there's 7 multiple outs or 4 multiple outs, whatever. But to them, there's one choice. There was only one choice. That was it. So it is really powerful.
The dastardly principles of magic, and we often forget, just how strong some of these methods that don't seem strong are. And I don't like to get boring about it, but I do talk about that a lot because that division is difficult. It's like when you learn when you're first reading how to make a coin vanish from your hand, the instructions basically are, don't really put it in your hand. And you go, what? What? I don't want to hear that. Because it's the exact opposite of what you're supposedly doing. And I always think if someone who's learning magic, eventually, once you're doing a false transfer and you're doing it right, it's really opening the door to what magic is, because that's like a big lie. That is a big lie, a false transfer, and some people can't get past that lie. Sometimes I've helped on shows where they have a magic element, and this producer had a show he wrote and went to pilot. It was a law show, a show about lawyers, but they gave one lawyer the magic bug, and this was not a great pilot. So this guy who's a lawyer, and like they have scenes where he's there with a pair of linking rings while at a meeting. It's like, really? And there was another thing.
You're guilty.
In the script, vanishing a red handkerchief. And so, okay, I'll teach this actor how to use a thumb tip, because clearly that was how I think the writer knew about thumb tips. And in the script, that was exactly the trick that was being done. And this actor, a known actor, a TV star level actor who was one of the stars of this pilot. So this actor was capable of expressing the entire human range of emotions except for one. The one, I'm not using a thumb tip. He could not rid himself of the self-consciousness of using a thumb tip. It was tough. Younger people are very often easier to train than older people because they don't know enough to be self-conscious.
Yeah,
we've talked about that before. There's some tricks that you learn early on in your career. For example, like Dave will always talk about the crisscross force and stuff like that, and you totally forget about them. And then later on in your career, like, oh, that was so good, and I overlooked it and things like that. Like I worked on Vikings, the TV show, and I remember sitting down with producers, and I did like a retention vision coin vanish, and the guy was like, "No, you like I've seen people just not put it in their hand, but I saw it in your hand." And he's like, "So where did it go? Did it go up your sleeve or whatever?" Because they were like, "We need to know for the shot." And I'm like, "No, you just think you saw it in my hand." And then I had to kind of try to explain a retention vision, which isn't easy. But you know, it's the same kind of thing. You learn these things and then you get better at them, but then you forget all the kind of foundations because you know you start kind of going, "Oh no, that's just a beginner trick type thing," and you kind of we're all guilty of it.
It's very difficult to have that objectivity because sometimes you overcomplicate needlessly, and you know add phases that you know aren't really warranted or don't really escalate, or you know help the performance. And we do it because, oh look, it's possible to do it, and to really just sort of I have a soft spot for effects where one thing happens. I do routines that have multiple phases, but I have a soft spot. Just one thing happens.
One outcome, yeah.
Or like one of my favorite tricks to do is the Fin-John nut and bolt effect. And I do it the way Ken Brook. So I think it was Ken Brook. Someone came up with a version that allowed for a repeat, and that's the version I do. Because you do that trick twice. Oh my God. First time's impossible. And they can't believe you're going to do it again. And you do it again. And they're burning you like you've never been burned. And it happens again. One of the great close-up effects. I wish I remember the name of the person who came up with that method of doing it a second time. But it's not all that bullshit magnet stuff. No. Trick. Once they made it visible, it ruined the trick. Because the majesty, of that effect. The first time I saw it, Marietta did it. And he took the nut and the bolt and he screwed them together. And he covered it with a little house made out of his business cards. Did the magic. And you lift off this fragile house, and now the nut is off the bolt. The fact that it's concealed, it's thrilling. And then they came up with, oh, look, you know, you can watch it come off the thing. It's like, well, that's not as good. Not even close to being.
One of the things that bothers me with that one is the sound a nut makes unscrewing off a bolt at high speed sounds like a motor. Even though it is not a motor, it sounds like a motor. So when you do it for someone, they go, well, it's just a motor. I can hear it. And you're like, no, that's it. That's it.
Sometimes, you know, there was a period of time where everyone wanted everything to be visual. Card magic was coming along and make it visual. It should be visual. And in New York on Saturdays, all the magicians and hobbyists would get together in the same place, the back of a restaurant that presented us. And there'd be a lot of old timers. And it was at this everything has to be visual phase. And at magic get-togethers, there's like, I don't know, it's sort of like this weird tide where there's a fad for one particular item for a week. And everyone was doing knives, color changing knives, visual. Here's another visual move. Well, here's another visual move. Here's another visual move. And an old timer said, it doesn't have to be visual. And he did a sequence that often is credited to Fred Capps, though it's done by different people in different ways. And basically, let's say you have a white knife and a black knife. You show them, you cover them with a handkerchief. And of course, in the restaurants, a napkin. You take out the white one, put it on top. You go, watch. You take a corner of the handkerchief, cover it and uncover it. Now the black one's on top and the white one's underneath, because the action of the handkerchief is doing the dirty work. But the magical impact was such that everyone had the same reaction. Everyone's knees got weak. It wasn't visual, it was concealed. But wow, the sensation of magic. I feel the same way about the nut and bolt trick. You're losing, you know, that sense of mystery when you're seeing what's happening.
I think Houdini knew that as well. You know, a lot of his stunts were in behind curtains and stuff like that, because there's that level of like, what could he be doing behind the curtain, or what are they doing, you know, under the table or under the hanky? I mean, I think that is definitely something that's missing in magic, and because everything now is visual, they're like the most visual trick at Blackpool. But I think I remember being at a convention years ago. I don't know who the magician was. He was an elderly magician, and he was doing stuff like he'd have a handkerchief and he'd just drape it over his thumb, and he just randomly, like all these like, you know, kind of new guys to magic, and even myself at the time, he just took out his scissors and just snipped off the top of his thumb, and everyone was just like, what the fuck? This guy's gone crazy. You know, it was just so extreme. It was so out of, like, you just didn't expect anything of that. And then he was like, it's just a bit of carrot, guys, relax. You know, it was just it was so good, you know. And everyone was just like, what's he gonna do? And it was just like, and it just popped off. And it was but it's one of those memories that you won't forget.
Yeah, the late great Pat Page, he had this. It's in his book. This coin vanish, where he'd take a handkerchief, hold up the coins, he'd drop the coin in, it would go in. You'd see it leave his hand. You would see it hit the bottom and stop. You could see it on the bottom. You could see the weight, and it would vanish. And again, not a new effect, but man, a brilliant sleight of hand vanish. I mean, It didn't use a gimmick, though. Was to call it sleight of hand is a little wrong. It used the properties of the handkerchief and everything. People would see this, and again, just jaws would drop because it was just so perfect. And you're right, we do lose perspective. And when I was hired at one point to start working the bar at the Magic Castle. So what'll I do at the bar? And I thought about it. I said, you know what? I'm going to do the tricks I loved when I was 12 years old. And I got them all together. And you want to know? They killed. These tricks I had when I was 12 years old killed. There was one we called Double X. It's gone through a lot of names, but it's the one where you can borrow a penny and a dime. And it's great when you do it in the spectator's hand. You put a penny and a dime in their hand. They make a fist. You take out the penny. Penny's on the back of their hands. You take your pen and go, it's going to happen at the count of three. You tap it 3 times. The third time, without cover, the penny turns into a dime. And they open their hands, and there's the penny.
Nice.
It's one of the great close-up effects. Now imagine that at a bar where it's like, come on, everyone, and you have 20 people leaning over to look at the spectator's hand, and all that magic is happening under, that laser attention. And it's just a penny and a dime. Other tricks I remember doing were like the Luber Fiedler trick, the rubber dam. What a great trick. What a great trick. And, trying to come up with, modern day presentations for these great, great tricks. That was fun, reliving all the tricks I liked when I was 12.
It's very cool.
The color vision I had as a kid, again, I think it was in a Marvin's Magic set, but it wasn't the cube wasn't color vision, so I learned it this way. And now when I see the color, I'm like, weird. It had the 5 senses and a 6th sense.
Interesting.
So there was an eye, an ear, a tongue, or like a mouth, and then like a third eye on a head. And that was the cube. So I'm like, that's what I always go to now if I'm ever going to bring it out. So I'm like, the presentation just writes itself. Like, imagine which sense you're thinking of. Like, you taste it? Oh, I can hear it. It's the ear, and it's just so strong. And it also came with a thing. There was 3 blocks, and the spectator would put one into a bag and hide the other 2, and you just move the bag, and you know which one it was because the edges were like round on both sides on one, round on one side and flat on the other, and flat on both sides. So and I found that in like one of my drawers when I was moving out of home, and I started doing it for people just in the bar, and it's frying them. I had no idea, and they're like, "Do it again, do it again."
It's 3 blocks.
Yeah, it was like 3 little plastic rectangles. So and it was such an easy mnemonic as well because the double rounded edges was yellow for the sun. And then there was another one that was just sharp and had a mnemonic with it. So you could just so clever the way you did it. If you looked at them, you'd be like, well, they're not the same. But like it flew past people.
There was a slum item that was a big fooler called Tell a Color Cards. And this was it was just pieces of cardboard. And it went for, I'm going to guess, $1 or $1.50. This fooled all living people. Because you got all these tags, and they're all different colors. Maybe there are five of them. And basically, you'd have someone pick one behind your back, et cetera, et cetera. You come out, you feel each one, the yellow one, and you're right every time. And you could do this. You could do it forever. They would never guess. And the way it worked, so subtle. They die cut them with the grain, not north-south, but sort of on a diagonal of the cardboard, invisible grain. But that grain made the resistance different if you've touched the corner with your finger. So if you this one, it looked the same on both sides, all solid color, no printing except the color. So through the handling, you subtly reversed the ones they did not pick. So it went back, with a different orientation. So as you feel each one, your fingers just touching that edge. And when you felt one that was different, either too resistant or too soft, that was the one that had been selected. And oh my God.
So good.
Something, that good cost $1 was ridiculous.
It's amazing. You could still release all these things again and $50 on Penguin.
I'd hate to think of all like the methods that have gone with magicians, because it is so secretive. And if you don't pass on your knowledge and stuff like that, I think there must be so many methods that are just gone, that they'll never see the light of day.
It's probably true. It's probably true. And some that are people like Steve Valentine is really a lover of magic, and he pours through old books, and he'll do something in his act, and you go, that's like the greatest trick I've ever seen. He goes, he mentions the book it's from, and it's like the 1930s or something, and he's done the research and found these effects.
It's amazing.
That's so good. So we have a segment on the show called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, about a performance that maybe started off well and went gradually downhill. You touched on a little story about when you tried electronics.
I did actually answer that already. So I'll do something else. I mean, most stories, the story about the electronics actually hadn't occurred to me. That is mildly humorous. But most things that go wrong in magic, I mean, it's not like everyone has stories. Oh, and then the rabbit that was in the dustpan woke up, and now that lid's hopping around the floor. Darn funny stories like that. And I've seen, some of the best magicians in the world have a trick that goes wrong. It's not a happy moment, but the great magicians handle it very, very well. And I tell a story about. I know you're wrapping it up, but it was so instructive to me. Lance Burton. I went to see him as a fan in Vegas. And he's doing one of his best tricks, the floating bird cage. And he's doing the trick, and the thread broke. And two things happen in the same instant. In that nanosecond, the audience has been taught how the trick works, and they know the trick failed. And now they know how it works, and they know it failed in an instant. And Lance, being a fit guy, leapt like an Olympian and grabbed the cage as it just fell like a rock. But he grabbed it before it hit the stage with the little bird inside, or rubber bird, whatever it was. And there he is, a Vegas audience. And this trick is over. Every part of me, and probably most people, would want to just run to your car and turn the Lance did the opposite. He stepped downstage toward the audience and did an expression like that just happened, or things happened. It was just a silent expression. He got one of the loudest ovations I've ever heard a performer get. The way he handled that moment. And that was very instructive to me, because even though I learned through improv, I was with an improv group, never show fear. Never show remorse. You need to be bold. And when we had people in the improv group show up that were maybe on the touring company and hadn't had as much experience, and they did something that they felt was a failure, and it registered on their face, oh my God, very uncomfortable for the audience. Because if they like you, they feel bad now, because they liked you and now you're feeling bad. And that's not the audience experience. That's not what you want it to be. And the exact same is true with magic. But it took me forever to learn that. Even though I had learned it with comedy, I hadn't learned it with magic. For some reason, I was a very slow learner. And I couldn't just make that jump. And eventually, I learned that. And of course, seeing things like Lance taught that to me. But I will tell you another funny story. Damn it, not funny. And it is kind of about something going wrong. In the parlor of the Magic Castle, it's my favorite room there. It's like a 65-seat theater with raked seats and very Victorian looking. And the way the show works is, a cocktail waitress comes in and takes all the drink orders. She goes out, she comes back, gives all the drinks to everyone. A host comes out. This is all while you're backstage. The host comes out, does your intro, and he exits as you come out to, whatever the response is off your intro, and you're into your first effect. It's very important those first moments when you meet the audience, because you only have 20 minutes, and those introductory moments kind of frame what you're doing, and you don't want to have to waste minutes in those 20 trying to win them back. So I've been at the castle for a long time. I know the drill. I'm introduced. I come out, and I start saying whatever I'm saying for that particular set I was doing. And I got maybe 10 seconds in, and the exit door, which is, locked so people don't wander in during performance. Somebody's going bam, 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 bam on the exit door. And I'm just starting, man. And so I said something like, oh, Mom, come back later. I've already started the show. And I keep going on. Bam, 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 again. And I don't know what it's, it's the Ghost of Christmas Past. Well, let's hope he leaves so we can continue. And another 5 seconds. I'm trying to go through. Bam, bam, bam. What the hell? Some drunk? I don't know. But I can't ignore it. I go over to the door. I open it. And it's the cocktail server. Apparently she took the orders, but the host introduced me before she served the drinks. And she has like 20 drinks. She's banging because I've never seen more drinks on this tray. And so now she comes in, who had the gin and tonic, who had the this, 20 times, not just giving the drinks, but getting the pay and making change. And I'm now doing bits. I'm like checking my watch. I'm like looking at the number of drinks. I'm getting whatever laughs I can off of this. But there's just too many. It's taking forever. So now I start backing off, getting a little laugh, backing up, back to the curtain, going behind the curtain. This really is a curtain. Back up, then I poke my head out a minute later. Are they done yet? Are they done yet? Come back. And then finally she finishes. You're done? And it took maybe 8 minutes to give all these, make all that. She's finally gone. I think I need to be introduced again. Can we just start over? I went, ladies and gentlemen, David Regal. And of course, and I back off, close the curtain around me. And now they were on my side. They knew exactly what had happened. And I'm getting this wonderful ovation. I mean, cheers. It was beautiful. And as I'm hearing this, I realized, there's the exit to the dressing room. That leads right to the hall, which leads to that exit door. So while they're still applauding, I got myself over to that door. So just as the applause came down, I went, bam, 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 bam. And the show started when some poor soul from the audience opened the door. I entered, and it was just chaos. It was delicious chaos.
Brilliant.
And I knew at the time it would never happen again. I said, this was just a wonderful, a horrible / wonderful experience. So I can tell it to you, because who else am I going to tell it to?
I love that. That's great. It's like a silver lining.
That was delicious.
If you were telling comedy, that could have been Will Smith these days, so you have to be careful.
Oh, Jesus. Too soon. Too soon.
Too soon, yeah.
It would have been worse if it was like doing a mentalism act and you're right in the middle of your Q&A and they come in with drinks and you have to now figure out who did order the gin and tonic and try to like point them out. Just to like kill the mystique.
It only happened once. But, everything that can happen does happen. As I said, most things are not happy. Most things are like, and then someone from the audience stole one of my props that I left on the table. I mean, these are not happy moments.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great being able to take advantage of it and like get the audience on your side, which is really good. That's such a funny story. For the people who are listening to this or watching this, if they want to keep up to date with stuff that you're doing or get some of your products, stuff like that, where can people find you online and all that?
DavidRegal.com or RegalMagic.com. It's the same site. And I do something. I have a mailing list too, and you can get on my mailing list there. There are some things I'd sell to my mailing list. Sometimes I think exclusively. Sometimes if they do well, I'll sell them to other people too. But I had a switch box. I didn't know if people would want it. I made 100 of them, and it took about a year. I said, I'll offer it to my mailing list. And this happened right after I realized I had to get rid of, I don't want to tell you the exact number of thousands of dollars, but many thousands of dollars worth of this thing that came back defective. Well, I have this other thing. And so I gave it to my mailing list. And I did everything the opposite of the way magic is normally marketed. I didn't do an ad. My son shot me with his phone. I said, here's what it does. Here it is. And I had 100 of them. I think they sold out in like 5 hours. 5 hours. And that is unusual. And so I said, I'll make some more. So I made 200 more. And I, again, adjusted my mailing list. I sold out another 200 of them. And it's kind of an expensive item. So I said, okay, you know what? In the grand scale of things, this thing was defective. I'll never sell it. This thing sold much more than I ever thought it would. So you know what? It's all good. I do these things to do them, honestly, because I want them to exist. And people should dissuade themselves of any notion that, magic tricks is not a great way to make a living. You don't say to your wife, hey, honey, don't worry about anything. I'm going to make magic tricks. You have to love it. And I do love the process. And I do love when something works out and it's going to be in people's hands. And to give you the full truth, I've always been in the same business, the make people less miserable business, or a little less miserable, because I grew up, as about 50% of kids do, in an unhappy household. It was just horrible. And, the marriage eventually ended, but before it ends, it's just a horrible household with unhappiness and tears. And so I remember being 4 years old, I was the baby of the family, walking up the stairs, halfway up the stairs during dinner time, because dinner time was, all the forces came together to create horribleness. Coming up with some bit and coming back down the stairs, doing some bit. Could we all be a little less miserable doing some stupid bit? And nothing has changed. When I was doing sitcoms, same thing, coming up with bits. A lot of that job is coming up with these moments. Yeah. And in magic, you know what? There's an element of that. Let me just come here and spend 5 minutes and make you a little less miserable. And so I like knowing that, oh, look, like I did a set of color changing knives about a couple of years ago. And I made them, to my mind, better. And people like them. And I think, oh, if you like them, they're gonna be in your pocket for the rest of your life. And I honestly do like thinking that someone's going to be a little less miserable because, I put this thing together because I'm in the make people a little less miserable business.
I love that, man. It's a great philosophy. That's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good, because I think, especially with the last 2 years and everything that goes on in the world, there's a lot of misery out there. So it's great to try and relieve it in the little ways we can as we go through life and give people that extra little bit of joy. So yeah,
and it's kind of anything to do. If you can leave something a little bit better than you found it, you've done your job.
And good magic, we've all seen good magicians. A good magician really will give an audience member an experience they remember forever. Mm-hmm. Forever. Haven't you been in situations like in a cab and someone with a group of people maybe, and someone finds out you're into magic, and it's like they start telling you a story about this magician they saw and what happened. And sometimes you can identify the magician. They don't even know their name, but you can identify from the story. And that's how deep an impression we can potentially make when we're doing our job well. And it doesn't happen all the time, but we've all seen good magicians, and we've seen a good magician connect. And that experience is thrilling. I got to help with something once. I was on a show where you're teaching celebrities how to do magic. In and of itself, controversial, but they did have to learn it. And part of the show is seeing them go through the process. And 1 week, I was lucky because I had the one contestant, the celebrity, who was also a musician, a very good guitarist. So he had no fear of learning a physical motion and devoting himself to it till it became muscle memory. That's what he was used to. He was also into martial arts. So he's used to training his body. So, well, I got to take advantage of this. So I didn't teach him a particularly difficult effect, but it was one where to look right, you had to be comfortable. I taught him, it's interesting, the one trick not in the Vanni Bossi book. Vanni Bossi was a brilliant magician. I only met him, I think, once. But everything he did was thrilling to me. And he had this trick where he'd show you a light bulb and you could examine a little light bulb. Do you know where I'm going with this? Clear, totally clear, not frosted. You examine that, and then he'd borrow a ring, and you can examine the borrowed ring. I'd take the light bulb back, and he'd take the ring. He'd take it, and he would toss it, and it would go into the light bulb.
Yeah, amazing.
And then he'd pick up the light bulb, and he'd shake it, and you'd see the ring in there, just going, moving along the light bulb. And then say, hold out your hand. And he'd go like that, and the ring would penetrate the light bulb and land back in your hand. So I was a fan of that effect. So I taught it to this celebrity who didn't mind learning it. And we did it in an old age home in the context of the show. That was our audience. And I swear to God, this little old lady, I think she was even in a wheelchair, he did it to her with one of her rings. And she looked up at him and she said, "That's the most beautiful thing I've seen in my life." And she had to have been 90 years old. Wow, magic. Magic really does have power. It gives people, or can give people, these experiences that are not trivial.
Yeah. As we said before, you don't see this shit every day. You need to react.
Definitely. I think that's amazing, and it hopefully inspires people to go out there and give people those moments and like try and make sure your magic's beautiful and you give the respect to those when you're performing for people and really just get it and spread the joy. I think it's really wonderful. And if people who are watching this, if they can hit the subscribe button on YouTube, like it, follow us on wherever it is, all that stuff that we meant to say to actually get people to watch stuff that I always forget to do.
That'll give us joy if you follow this, because this all started during the pandemic. It was just me and Dave talking, and then I was like, let's start getting other magicians and performers on and talk to them or whatever. And Dave was like, nobody will want to come on, and I was like, yeah, I know, let's just forget about it now. And then a few weeks later, it's just skyrocketed, and it's very niche, but the community is so vast, globally, that the feedback has been incredible. So thanks everyone for listening. We're not we're here for you, with the knowledge and the stuff that we're getting and the different, antidotes and even the good, the bad, and the uglies. There is that kind of lull that, it went bad. But, if you're seeing seasoned performers that are performing like yourself in the Magic Castle and you've got products out, if you're a young performer, if you drop your deck of cards, if you drop a thumb tip or whatever it might be, laugh it off and move on and just do something else. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. And thanks again, David, for coming on. We really appreciate you spending your time with us this evening. We really appreciate it, and we definitely have to get you on again because there's so much more to talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for them for sponsoring us. The check still hasn't come in, but I'm sure it's on the way from Mountain Dew. So if they could just make sure that they might have the wrong address or something, I'll clarify that. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you again next week for more interviews and talking about magic. And thanks, David, again.
Sure.
Thanks again.